Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Wombolf Complains, or rather, Wombolf Reviews.
Psych! That's the wrong number!
Soldier boy, I finna why me crack it, why me roll? Why me crack that soldier boy, that Superman, that why me?
So, Frostwell won the war. Where do we go from here? What are your thoughts about that? Let me know in the comments section. So, I've been playing AE games for over a decade now, and never have I ever encountered this much salt over a war in AQ3D than this one. The last time I witnessed saw losers to this extent was during the Legion vs Nation war, which was kind of a technical loss, but honestly that was just the beginning. So now these salty teenagers have grown into adults with a larger concentration of salt in their system and the same amount of edge, or probably more to be honest, and quite a number of them have migrated to AQ3D. I'm not stating that everyone that represents the darker factions are salty and edgy, but a verbal minority of community influencers included were really taking this loss personally and were going out of their way to make people feel bad for representing Christmas in December. What do you guys think about that? To me that just feels pretty silly and selfish, if you'd ask me. But hey, that's just my opinion. But when the war ended, the taste was honestly, the taste of sweet victory really hit home. It reminds me of a video I made about a similar situation 4 to 5 years ago on my older channel titled Why Evil Won the Shadowflame War on AQW. I was just about to say AQ3D. I'm so accustomed to the new game that I even forgot the old one existed. Okay, putting that aside, the link will be in the description. But this is how it went down back then in my teenage phase, I guess. I'm probably still cringy right now. The people that watch me can tell me straight up to my face that I am cringy. Just look at this getup. Look at this majestic getup. That just bleeds cringe. Okay, back to the topic. So, this was a 3-minute 30-second video, I think, where I expressed my views about the lack of content and leadership figures for the good or bright side aligned players of AQW, which goes as follows. Greetings to the users of AE Games. Today, I don't think I'm the only one that noticed this. This is the current situation that the war meters are at. Good. Sword Heaven, 16%. Queen of Monsters, 19%. Evil and Shadowfall, 72%. But hey, this shows which side the people fight for. This is what we have come to. I have my reasons to believe why a rounded up figure of 80% of AQW's player base sides with Evil. 1. Evil has 3 prominent factions: Dage, Nolgat, and the Shadow side. Pretty obvious, isn't it? Point number 2. People tend to follow strong leadership figures. I think it's a pretty psychological fact that we can all accept. Point number 3. A lack of factions and leadership figures on the good side, which is also true. And even if there is an abundance of them, if I'm honest, their personalities are mostly paper thin. I think it's time we, the followers of the light, get what we deserve. We need a new leadership figure, someone that will convince people to join our cause. Considering the war, we will keep pushing on. Even if we go down fighting. I, for one, will not give up. Even if nobody wants to take a stand, I will. Will you join me? That is up to you to decide. Okay, so that kind of sums up the cringe fest. But me being an unpopular content creator, just like I am right now, didn't get me a lot of interactions with the free player base, and this is what they had to say. This has been an age-old problem, and what I've noticed is that a majority of the Bright Line players were not verbal about their predicament, while the verbal minority didn't say anything because they either don't know how to change things or don't bother saying things because they think that even if they voice their opinions, nothing's gonna happen because the majority gets what they want, and what they want is Legion and Nation content. So it's been a problem for ages in AQW until Lakin came in and started something, but then his contract kind of expired and he moved on to pursue his goals outside of the AE community. But yeah, after Lakin, haven't been any major players on the field for the good guys. But there have been a few minor neutral good and evil team factions based around individual artists and their art, but nothing on a large enough scale in comparison to the Legion or Nation or even the Seraphic Paladins. And now that AQ3D is AE's next new endeavor so far, the only canonically established faction that we have is Dage's Undead Legion, and not only do we not have a variety of other factions and sub-factions hinted to be released to us in the future, but we're forced to join the Legion as well. I don't know if Redcon's the right word to use, but I think that's it's safe to assume that it might be an active part of the storyline, where you infiltrate the underworld in order to gain a rune to the portal in Baton, but it still encourages players to join the Legion right from the get-go, instead of allowing them to organically pick a side to exposing them to, say, different factions through the way they handle situations that happen within the story. So that's kind of a point that I'd like to bring up. So why am I making this video? It's pretty late into the video to even answer that question, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it anyways. So with Frostwell winning the war, I thought it would be the perfect time to bring attention to AE that the player base is in fact not just saturated with Dark Alliance players anymore. To the social player, the only active player base would be the fraction of the community that is involved in guild activities on Discord, as well as the part of the community that is verbal and interactive on primarily Twitter and Facebook. But contrary to popular belief, a majority of the new player base is mobile based, and AQ3D is mostly or most probably one of their first MMORPG games, and they don't really interact with other players because I'm assuming they're unfamiliar with MMO social culture, or they don't know the language, or they're children. One of the three. Or they're just antisocial online as well, which is kind of what I am to an extent, which is completely opposite to how I am in reality, just to justify that. But yeah, with the outcome of the recent Mogloween versus Frostwell war, I personally think that it's rather distasteful to put two seasonal holidays against each other, and especially since they are celebrated en masse by different people and each hold their own significance. But in my eyes, there are only a handful of reasons Artix would have done so. Point number 1. To figure out if the player base's interests are still the same, given the recent polls from Alina to see which side players represent in Game Over Twitter. I think it happened a couple of weeks or week before the Mogloween, basically before Friday the 13th. So that's just one assumption down. Point number 2 would be that he might have been convinced to do so by a pretty influential player at Night Omega's poll on Twitter. Point number 3, he might have just thought it would have been a good idea that probably it's like Friday the 13th in December, so why not? But that's it from me, because these are just honestly my speculations. So where do we go from here? There's not a lot one can do from the outside of the studio, but as a part of the community and someone that has the opportunity to create content, I can do my part and voice my opinion and probably pitch a solution or two to the problems faced by the community that have been observed over time. In games like World of Warcraft and Blade of Soul, factions affect or restrict your choice of race and class, and are not necessarily, stressing on the not necessarily, a personal experience where you pick a faction, but it's more of something you do to acquire the playstyle that you enjoy playing than you picking a faction for what it is. But what I notice is AE's use of the concept of factions is that they look at them as endgame content. And what I mean by endgame content is stuff to do once you're done with, say, the story and in-game events until there's the next release. But if the faction's prominent enough, they can probably build up to influencing the flow of the story, or they could have an event of their own. But yeah, so how do factions function in AE games? Well, the player interacts with say the faction head or a faction representative and quests to gain tokens of sorts to turn them in for equipment which are in the theme of the specific faction. So what I've noticed is over the years there are 1 to 3 faction based events, be it wars, artist birthdays, or just a story release where players get bonus faction content and items. So over time, players begin to identify themselves with their faction of choice and unconsciously alter their personality to mirror what that faction stands for within their actual lives due to the extended exposure to the game. But this isn't something that applies to every individual, but I've observed that it does happen to people over time, that is. But yeah, carrying on. Now, taking this into consideration, I personally believe that AE needs to provide players with more of a choice when it comes to ideologies, moral alignments, and perspective, to allow them the opportunity to develop and to decide what, or rather which one, they identify with the most. A good way to maintain balance between alignments, a character designer can use the D&D moral compass as a reference point, where creating a faction and its representative would be a good guideline, if you'd ask me. But this is just the beginning. So now, taking the standard D&D moral compass into consideration, I put together a list of AQW factions and personalities that seem to have a considerable amount of following, either lore-wise or within, like, just basically players liking their gear and content. So Artix and Arnax fall under lawful good. Galnot Victoria, aka Robina, and Ailton are kind of neutral good. Lakin under chaotic good. Brendan, Sophia, and Constantine all fall under lawful neutral. And under true neutral, nobody significant comes to mind from in-game. Well, no one other than you, the player, can truly be neutral, because to an extent it's kind of like your starting point on the moral compass, but I'll get into it deeper further down in the video. So J6 would fall under chaotic neutral. Sepulture, Gravelin, Dage, and Nulgath all fall under lawful evil. Darkath, contrary to his alignment, falls under neutral evil. And finally, the Queen of Monsters is obviously chaotic evil. So now, with this in mind, when we take popularity, lore, and relatability of factions and their representatives into account, these are the factions that would qualify to stay on the chart. So where would the majority lie according to you guys? Let me know in the comments section. So if you guys haven't guessed it yet, it's lawful evil, and almost every popular faction fits into this exact criteria. The ones that are faded out are somewhat of a popular or are well written enough to qualify to still stay on the chart. So from what we can see, there's a complete lack of competition to stand up against the majority to maintain the balance between light and dark. Or rather, just two completely different ideologies. And if we think about this from a realistic point of view, any governing body with just one side ends up in a totalitarian or rather one-sided majority, not willing to welcome something different or change. Basically, something like a pseudo dictatorship. But yeah, that's kind of what the situation is, and it kind of gets to me at sometimes. But I've been trying to stay quiet about it and thinking about and thought about solutions, and here I am today, taking this opportunity to make this video. So what are my suggestions? To start off, let's structure this properly by picking existing problems, accepting them, and then providing optimum solutions to them. Number one would be coming to terms with the obvious absence of balance in representation of a standard moral compass in the current factions on AQ3D's platter. That's a mouthful. Observing the current increase in users that are aligned with the good side of a moral compass or that are neutrally aligned that are currently coming into the community would be good enough for number two. Acknowledgement that there's a lack of depth of personality and flaws in pre-existing faction leaders that are aligned with good that are currently in game would probably be number three. Now that these 3 points have been brought forward, I have a few solutions, or rather a few good suggestions to fix these problems. The first steps that AE can take to improve the quality of writing for good team characters would probably be to give them as much importance as they give their villains, because if you guys have been around for a long enough time, you would have noticed that AE usually has design notes where they conceptualize a villain and ask us for advice to see what would be more appealing towards us. So I feel like if they did the same thing for their quote-unquote heroic characters or neutral characters, it would be a pretty good improvement until things pick up, that is, and they get better at doing what they do, which they have been doing from day one, which is honestly why I'm still playing the game, to be honest. As a result of my analysis, I've kind of noticed that AE has a habit of creating a saturation of ordered evil factions in MMO games, and I kind of feel like it's about time that I've broken broken their habit and diversified the character writing by working on characters that lay in different blocks of the moral alignment grid, instead of creating monochromatic characters that identify with just being basically a Puritan hero or a villainous villain, a guy who's evil for evil's sake. But that is something that these guys have worked around for a very long time. I love your villains, but we need some good heroes as well. Please, my guys, I love you, but that it kind of gets hard not being able to be represented in a game that you love for a very, very long time. Like, I've been playing AE games for 11 years now, but yeah, I keep getting sidetracked. A few good examples of character writing within the AQ3D universe would be the original Galnot, Sophia, and maybe Malik Grimsbane. But we just got like a small segment of him in Shadowguard. But I think he has so much more potential being a hero gone renegade. Not knowing what his reason for doing that actually gives us it gives him so much more character. Well, I would have included Vayne, but he honestly just feels like a modified Thanos clone too. It's kind of like a thin thread where he would fall under a Thanos clone, but you guys wouldn't notice it yourselves as well. I'm sorry, guys, AE, but I have a harsh opinion. Don't take it to heart, please. Please don't take it to heart. But just take everything with a grain of salt. As for ideas for a new and interesting faction utilizing the D&D grid as a reference, I brainstormed a few examples that can directly be implemented into the game as it is in the near future without any additional features being required for them to function. But I'm gonna do this in a separate segment, so I'm gonna call this video to a close. Thank you guys for sticking around and listening to me while I rant. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna upload this video first and then do the second half and upload it later. So if you guys would like to check that out as well and see what my suggestions are and probably potential candidates for future factions and sub factions, you can come check out the next video, which I'm gonna link in the video pretty soon. But yeah, that's about it for this video. This is me, Wormwolf, signing out. Thank you, AE, for checking this video out as well. I hope you guys do, but thanks for giving me this opportunity to be a content creator and for allowing me to be an idea guy, just like Arctic said. But yeah, this is me signing out. I will see you guys in part 2 of this video series. Ciao, take care of yourself, and have a good night. One more out.